So we have our own YouTube channel where we make all these. John and Karen, you make sure you restart recording at the right moment, and that should probably be right now. So John, go ahead.
Okay, great. My name is Jon Merrifield. Thanks for coming and sharing your time with me in this presentation today. I also want to thank, this really, this whole thing is run by Tom and Karen and Cornelius. And so, it's their efforts, I think, that makes all this happen. So I just really appreciate that. And I think we all should. So, okay, well, I'm just going to share my screen and go about doing that. So this movie, actually, I have it loaded up, I think. Let me just look real quick. Yeah. So I worked on this this movie. It's called The Night. Here it is. This is a screen record because I couldn't, even if you buy something from Amazon, you don't get to download it and use it. You still have to play it back. But so this movie, I'm just going to talk about it for a minute and then I'll get into all my work. It's well crafted. Arash Hari, the writer, director, and Alex Brito, the producer for Mammoth Pictures. It's a good film. It's well done. It's well acted, well shot. The audio is awesome. They put some good effort into it. And I can play the trailer. Maybe we'll do that. Let's just do that.
میخوای بریم اونجا شلوغ‌تر؟
بریم همینجا دیگه فرقی نمیکنه که. Welcome to the Hotel Normandy. How many nights will you be staying? Just one. این بچه بیدار شده.
عزیزم
Someone's been disturbing us all night. I'm sorry, I didn't see anyone. Excuse me. Hello?
چیه؟ Are you lost?
برام کجا بودی؟ Is there something that you're not telling me?
Surely it's not going to go on.
It's like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you get in.
Okay, well, it's a good film and I'm honored to be part of the team. I was one of the visual effects artists. I actually did about 25 shots. I'm going to show them. This film, it's like semi-historic because within the last month, it was released here in theaters and online and Amazon and all that. And it was also one of the first American-produced films ever to be released in theaters in Iran. So it has some sort of historical whatever to it. And so I was just happy to be part of it. And, when you work on films, they care about everything. And they may, you may do a composite or let's just look at this here. You'll work on a composite or it may be a few days or a week or whatever. And then when when the producers and directors screen the work, they go to a screening room. So it's on a, it's on a movie screen, and they'll break out, maybe you can posit the background behind this girl or something, and they'll break out a laser pointer and go, what's that right there? And it'll be like one little speck of dust, but it's that big. So they're very, and these, Alex, the producer of this film, and that they're very, nothing's forgiving. So they want everything to be perfect. And so what I have here, this is Premiere, and I'm going to go into After Effects and break some of this work down in a minute. These are all the shots that we did visual effects on. And actually all the visual effects was done in log color space. So really they look like this, right? So here's one where that's that's a prosthetic, and his real finger was under there. If I turn this on and off, you can see it. Let me make it bigger here. So this is the original, right? You can see his real finger sort of under there. And then this is the work to make it go away. Let's put the color on too so we can see. So now all that's been removed. So that's kind of the process. This one shot I want to show you, well, I'll go through a few of these. They did things like they wanted this car. Let me just do it this way. Yeah, the zoom works. They didn't want this car there. This happens in a lot of things, in a lot of commercials. There's all kinds of little visual effects and retouching that happens that you wouldn't ever notice that any work has been done. But if we turn that on and off, let's do it this way. Hold on. Oh, I can't. Can you see that car going away? And
Absolutely.
here's another one. So these shots are relatively easy because the camera's not moving. But there's a couple there later that the camera does. But this is one of the main shots in the film where he thinks that perhaps his tattoo is causing a problem, right? So he's going to take a scalpel to his tattoo. And the shot was done initially. This is from the screener. The shot, let me just mark this here real quick. The shot was done originally by an artist too, and to give him, and they didn't think it looked photo real enough. Basically, he didn't have any scalpel. He was holding just the handle of a scalpel, right? So that blade had to be put on there in visual effects afterwards and in post. And so what they did was they had a CGI artist do it, and here it is. Let's do it this way. Yeah. So that's a CGI blade put on there. Now, so then the producer and director, they were thinking that's not photoreal enough. It looks fake. Well, it looks pretty good, but they thought it looked fake. And now I'm not going to, the other artist was still a member of the team, but he actually left because he was also a nurse. He's a visual effects artist and a nurse. So when the pandemic hit, he had to abandon his work on this film and go be a nurse.
Wow.
So they came to me and I told them I can do it. I want to do it in After Effects and make it a compositing trick and not a CGI trick. And here's the final of that. So this is my work on that blade. And then I'm gonna try to zoom in so we can see if we can. Oh, I can't play it back though. Let's do it this way. 1 second, sorry. Let's do it this way. Yeah, so there's the fake blade, basically. And you see I did little things. There's little highlights, little light things that happen, little glints here and there. Anything we could do to try and make it look, a little more real. And then I'm also going to show you how I did it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I said that seemed like a lot of effort they could have just used a little plastic blade or something.
Yeah, but then I don't get paid. So
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and so and that's the thing, you know, this stuff they like I'm telling you, they, you know, of these 25 shots I did, a lot of them are just that, you know, you're just moving. Like I removed this light, you know, and there's a cable there, I think. Let's see, yeah. There was a camera cable or a power cable right there. So there's lots of that kind of work. Or what I've done a million times is remove camera crew reflections out of the side of cars, because it happens all the time. Now, so, and then I used After Effects for all this. And really in features, there's two compositing softwares that are used the most. One is Nuke, which is by the Foundry, which is sort of the de facto high-end compositing tool for features. But the other one is After Effects. There's a couple other compositing tools that are used in commercial making and commercial visual effects, but Nuke and After Effects are the ones that are for features, because they're not, you know, in commercial, that's all client driven. There's client sessions, and there's not in films, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's go look at this shot some more. So what I have is I have it in After Effects right here. Here's my composite of this shot, right? And there's the knife there. Let me zoom in here, and here's my knife layer right here. And what this is if I twirl down into it, what I did was, I'm going to go back all the way. I made this knife build, right? But I built it out of the actual original footage. So if I go and look here, I built these Photoshop layers for the blade, but for the coloring, what I did was, let me go, let's see, I got to get down in there again. Knife build, stabilized knife. So I took the original shot, right? And I stabilized it. Right? If you look at this part here, which is all I have, I stabilized that. So it's kind of sticking right there. And then I use that to be part of a knife build. So now that is that reflection, texture, and all that is happening on this blade, which I built in Photoshop, but then composited that reflection, stabilized over it. So I would get the same sort of, you know, light flares and texture of the metal and all that. And so that's really, here's my knife blade that I tracked in there. And that's really what made it, that's what gave it the photorealistic thing that was lacking from the CGI. It was really just, I just stole the original. That's all I'm interested in, is this area right here. Yeah, one of those little light things. And so that's really what's happening inside of this. It's a little hard to see in here, but that's what's happening inside of this knife. Right, and then I use that. I got this going on. So this is my final sort of knife build. Let's try to look at it full screens, full. So now I can't really scrub through this the way you can when it's, you know, a lightweight file. But so that reflection from the original knife is all flickering on here. And that's the element that I then cut in here and tracked with the shot. Oops. So, and then the tracking was also a nightmare. All the best work, this is my opinion, all the best work includes tracking and masking. There's just no way around it. You have to become excellent at all those. There's like 3 trackers, and I'll go through a couple of them in here in After Effects. There's like 3 trackers in After Effects. And sometimes you might try all 3 until you figure out which one works the best. And also, this is just my belief, any of the automatic processes, they often do a good job, but they're never perfect. You have to go in and help and futz with them and all that. In fact, if I look at this knife here, all these keyframes are now this group here is copied from my track that I did here. So this is track data in keyframes. And then I copied that track data here in that position, right? But then all these other keyframes are me, they're mine. They're just rotating that knife. You know, I tracked it to that point, the point of his hand there, but then I had to manually sort of rotate it, you know, when it gets up to the top up here. Let me just open this up further. Well, you see all these tracking points. Let's do this. Just not to make those go away. And zoom in there. So all that rotation that's going on up there is kind of a manual thing. But when you watch it play back in real time, it you don't even see it. So I mean, I've done compositing for a long time. I'm old and stuff. So I'm just telling you, After Effects is one of the strongest tools I've ever worked in. And this shot in a way kind of proves it, because CGI, maybe it could have, if the guy had more time, but couldn't quite pull off this real look. And I showed this to a couple people. I'm like, what do you think about this shot is fake? And like, oh, you fixed his hair. I'm like, no, that part's there is all fake. Is there any questions or anything so far?
John, I'm just curious, just approximation of, with this hesitation movement, and I do understand that he's hesitant, I mean, because he's going to cut himself. So approximately how long time would it take you to track those movements in a scene like this?
Oh, yeah. So this shot from nothing to finish, there's about 4 days in it, and then there was a couple days of revisions after that.
Oh,
yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing. Once you get the track, then you're good. And then that's what happened. They let's see if I have the other versions in here. 64A, yeah. So here's some older versions. So I built it all. Let me just get this. And they thought, well, that's too long. Can you shove the thing back in so it's shorter?
Oh, God.
You know, so this was version 4. And yeah, but it ended up like this. Okay. Yeah, it's fun. That's fun work, because you don't have to, unlike like video editing, you know, you can listen to music while you're working on a really hard comp and track. You can't really listen to music while you're editing because there's audio and all that. So that was fun for me.
So John, can I ask a question?
Of course.
This is Anne. So when you're masking that in your layers, is the scalpel beneath the hand or above the hand? And
okay, good question. Yeah. So it's it's basically over. Let me just zoom in here and I'll show you what I'm doing. So, and that, I know I look at it this close when I'm actually working too, just to make sure everything's working. So if I look at this, let me see if I turn these back on. So these are the tracking points and the axes of what's going on there. But often, so there's a matte shadow on knife. I spelled it wrong. Shadow on knife. So this layer right here is just, well, I don't see it at this part. There's a little shadow that happens right here. It's not happening at this particular spot in the thing. But that's what that layer was for. So the hand's really, it's really over, you know, but I'm using masking and things to get this edge soft. Let's see.
so at the bottom of your stack is just the straight footage that was filmed.
Yeah. So what I have here is, I'm going to zoom into this too so I can show you. So this is this layer is really, doesn't even need to be on. It's only holding my track data,
Okay.
right? And then this is the original shot.
Okay.
And then this is the knife, my third
Okay.
build of it or whatever. And this is the shadow on the knife and it's track matte. And fill hand over. This is me putting the hand back over the top of the knife. Let's look at that. So if I turn that off, well, here it is soloed. So let me zoom out. So this is the hand where I'm putting it back over the top.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm turning that on and off.
Yeah.
And I use this layer to be the matte that I hand drew. And that actually, if I go through, you can see it's like hand sort of tracking with it. Let's see. Yeah, I may have copied some, but it's mask path. I tracked it and then probably altered it so that it was right. And then I use that layer to cut the hole to put this hand back over. And also I see some of the feathering changes in different parts, depending on how fast it's moving. You know, you want this soft motion blur feather, right? I want that to be over. And then some places where it's still, then there's not a huge feather. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah, it's all
question
those
about
little
some
details. Sure, Karen.
basic terminology for those of us who have never used After Effects. What is tracking? And I think it's gathering the movement in XY coordinates of where an object is.
Yeah, in fact,
XYZ.
I was
Some of
gonna,
the layers are 3D.
sorry.
Not just in XY, but also in Z, because it looks like some of your tracking layers were 3D layers. Is that right?
Yeah. Sometimes, you know what I did with that one was I tracked it in X and Y to get I wanted to nail the motion. And then I manually adjusted the scale so that it looked right. Cause you couldn't really get a good track on that. So you can track motion in X, Y, and Z. Often when that happens, I'll use the planar tracker over in Mocha, or you can track the camera, which is different than the motion. In fact, I was going to use this shot. Let me just show you a couple of these shots in here. We're going to track something right now, just so we can kind of see that. So let's go down here. Yeah, so this was this shot. Whoops, let me go back. I just want to show this one because it was harder. There's a car in this one too. It's right behind her right there. Let me see. Hold on, let's make it bigger. And there's a car right there. Do you see it?
Barely.
Right there? Yeah. Okay, so, and then because there's motion and all that, there you can kind of see it. So they wanted that gone. So that required a little handwork to try and shift minus. Try and get that gone, but there it is, you know, gone.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I hand painted a clean plate, kind of covered her head up and everything, where I used cloning brush and Photoshop and all that to make a clean plate of the wall back there. Right. And then I tracked it to the camera shot and added a little noise and grain back in. I can show you in some of these other shots, that were done also by other people and then came back to me. These shots here, where we move the car here, if you look up here, oops. Let me turn this off. That's the one before this. Yeah, okay, so that's the work they did where they actually stopped the traffic up there. But if you look at it really close, you can see that this is still, there's no grain moving. So if you use a freeze to repair something, you need to put film grain back in it so it matches. Okay, just a side note. All right, so one of the things we did was, let's go back here. They just changed the lights here. They wanted the lights out, not on these. So for example, this one here, that light up there, they didn't want to see any of these lights, right here. Now, when you watch this scene, you don't think anything. You don't even notice that they did that. But they're really particular about, hey, this scene, there wouldn't be anybody up, so it wouldn't make sense. We want all the lights off. And it's to get it to look right. And, you know, it's not a button push. We're going to do one right now, kind of mess around with it. So the way that was done was, here's the original shot in the log color space. And then she walks in front of it, which exacerbated the challenge of the track, let's say. We're just going to track that window from here when she goes by right here. So we want to track that. So there's a couple of trackers in After Effects. Right here is the tracker panel, and you can track a camera, stabilize, track the motion, stabilize the motion. These two basically do the same thing. They use different techniques to do it. So we're going to track motion. I could try to track the camera, but her running through there is going to probably screw up the, you know, its ability to know what it's tracking in terms of the camera. It might try to follow her and all that. And I'm not going to start until after she goes. I'm just going to track the motion of this area here. And now it also, the camera's panning and it almost looks like it might be rotating a little bit. So maybe I need a track rotation as well. I'm just going to go right to this spot on this clip, select track motion. And what that immediately does, it throws you into layer workspace because it tracks on the layer, not on the actual composition. Right, and you get this little tracking point. This is the cumbersome, this is one of the things that bother me about After Effects. Here's my tracking point, but it's so small, I can't grab the control handles and stuff. So what I do is I just zoom into my composite and make my thing a little bigger so at least I can see it, and then I can take it and move it to where it needs to go. I want this crosshair in the center to be near like a corner or a stripe or an X or somewhere where there's a difference between light and dark. Yeah. It basically tracks the best on contrast. So I'm just going up to this top left corner of this window. Right, somewhere in there. And really what it does is it tries to, this is your reference frame and your reference point. So each frame, it'll search as far as this big box out here on the outside goes. It'll go out and search looking for that same exact pattern in terms of luminous values and or RGB values if you chose those. So that's what it is. It's going to repeat this and it's only going to search in this window. So if I made this window huge, it would take 30 times longer because it's trying to search in all this area when I really know it's only going to be moving in about here. So we're going to do this now with just one point. Right now, we're going to just tell it to track forward, analyze forward, which is this button right here, analyze forward. And what it's doing is it's going and it's doing that thing. You can see it tracking, and it's actually building tracking data keyframes for us inside of this tracker. I'm going to stop it. So I built these keyframes, but they don't really do anything. It's just the tracking data. But we can see for that motion anyway, how it sticks right to that window. But now we have to use it to track something to go over that area. We'll fake it. Now, this is the way that I like to do it. I like to, the item that I'm going to track is like a color correction adjustment layer, let's say, or a mask. But I don't like to track right on the actual layer itself. I like to have a track sitting on its own layer, and then I parent whatever I'm tracking to that own layer. So I'm going to make a couple more layers here real quick. I'm just going to make a solid layer and call it track, right? And that's where I'm going to throw my track. So I'm going to throw that down on the bottom, and I don't want to see the red. Right, and then I'm going to make another layer that's like an adjustment layer. Let's just make a new adjustment layer, maybe. A new adjustment layer, and we'll call it darken. Okay, and what we want to do though is put that tracking data now on our tracking layer. I'll do this quickly. So I'm going to go to this track that we have, current track, tracker 1. And I'm going to say edit the target. I want the target to be that layer. And I want to apply it. So now it's going to send that track information from this layer to my track layer in terms of actual position data that we can use. So this layer now, this bottom track layer now has a bunch of keyframes on there for every frame. Right? And we'll go up to our adjustment layer. And we'll throw a color correction on there just to knock that down. Like, just pretend. I'm not going to do it exactly the right way. I'm just going to make it darker for now. We'll just make it darker, right? And we say that's what we want our window to be. Now we're going to make a mask right there just around that window. I'm going to turn this off just so I can see what I'm doing. Whoops. Okay. We're just going to pretend, say, oh, that's beautiful. Now, typically when I work on stuff, I zoom way in and I get the details, you know, perfect and all that. But we're just going to get close for now. We can turn that back on so we can see what it's doing. Now it's a little dark, maybe. Maybe we'll soften that just a hair. We could also just pull it back just a hair. Okay, just to get the idea. Okay, so and now we want that to move. So I'm going to parent that to our track. So now it'll move with it. Let me turn this off. Just for those keyframes that we made. So there's tracking. And what that is the track, it's position keyframes. X,
Does
Y
the
is
term
all.
parent mean to tie it to a track?
Sorry.
Does the term parent
Oh,
it to a
yeah.
track, does that mean tie it to a track?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it'll, I think it should be, the term is parent, but I think it should be child because really this track layer is the parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the darkened layer is the child, right? But the term is parented to that they use.
Mm-hmm.
So all it's
Early
doing
on,
is,
you also used a term I wanted to ask about. You said you stabilized something.
yeah, sure, we can do that too. I'm just going to show one thing. So the reason I do this, where I make the track, and I could just put the track right on the actual darken layer, but then I'm stuck. Now I'm like pigeonholed to in terms of position and transform, and it's easier for me. I can take this layer now and I can move it down here now, even though it's the same track, but I still have this, you know, I haven't messed with the integrity of the track at all, I guess. So stabilize really refers to, you know, if you have like a shaky camera shot and you want it to be still, you would stabilize it, which it does the same thing. It gets the tracking data and then it reverses it and applies it to the shot. You have to be a little careful now. If there's a lot of shaking and so much so there's motion blur, even if it's stabilized, the focus will look like it goes in and out because the motion blur was changing in the shaking.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hear a kitty.
Not mine this time.
Oh, that's my kitty too. It's feeding.
Yeah. Someone asked me what my cat's name was. I go, well, her name's Daisy, but I call her, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Was there any other terms I said or questions that you? Okay. I was going to show one other thing where, let me show here real quick. If I go back down into here, these knife builds, a lot of these, you know, you can just see their Photoshop layers.
Mhm.
And so the one thing I said in a thing, we do some like Photoshop work, and Photoshop and Illustrator work great with After Effects. They work great. Here's what they do. I was going to demonstrate that unless anybody has any questions on some of that stuff. I'll move on to my next thing. Okay. Oh, this was, well, let's look at some of these. Here is one where when he goes in this room in the morgue, they didn't like the green on these windows. They wanted them to be black. So it was a bit of a struggle, this shot with his head crossing over. Yeah, see, I don't think this was the final version. Look, that looks terrible right there. Oops. I forget what program I'm in sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, see right there, that edge. And that's what they do. Break out the laser pointer. What? That edge looks wrong right there. And you got to go back and fix it. Okay. So I love this stuff. So I have this Photoshop file that I just built in here, and it's just these layers. It's just text layers. This is text, and a background layer that has a gradient overlay on it. Right, but let's say I wanted to animate all this stuff in After Effects. So what I'm going to do then is just import this file into After Effects. It's just right here on my desktop, actually. So I'll go into After Effects. I'll just do it in the same project for now. And I'm just going to import that file, which I just happen to know is on my desktop. And it's this one right here. And I'm going to bring it in, not as footage, but as a composition, retain layer sizes. So that's your choice. When you bring in a file from, hold on, I'm going to change this speaker because it's driving me nuts. Hello? Okay. When you bring in Illustrator or Photoshop files into After Effects, you can either bring them in as footage, which really means it's just a kind of rasterized solid frame, or a composition, which means it'll bring in the layers. And then there's two choices: composition, retain layer sizes, or composition. What that's retain layer sizes, what that means is, let's say you have 4 or 5 elements in your Photoshop or Illustrator file, and it'll bring in the layers with like the anchor point in the middle of that layer. If you don't have retained layer sizes, then the anchor point will come in the middle of the composition, right? So maybe you have a sun over here, but then the anchor point's here. And maybe you don't want that because you want to animate based on the anchor point. 90% of the time, I use retained layer sizes. Occasionally, for something I was doing, I don't remember what it was, I had to do it the other way. So that's what I'm going to say. Import composition, retain layer sizes, and I'm just going to say import. And then opens up this dialog box. I can make editable layer styles. So I can still edit the layer styles. We'll click on that and just look at it and see. Or maybe the layer styles don't need to be changed. I can leave them. I'm going to do that anyway to just see what happens. And say, okay, so what that does is it brings in a composition. I can tell because that little symbol there, that icon, is a composition icon in After Effects. And it brought in and it put in a folder. They call them folders, not bins, in After Effects. I think
Yeah,
maybe
that's
that
why it's
should
like
be-
Photoshop.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Here's a side note. So a lot of the tools were all bought by Adobe from other companies. For example, if you know the history of After Effects, that was two brothers. One brother worked at ILM. One brother was, he was a professor at the University of Michigan. And the brother at ILM was complaining about he couldn't make bitmap images look good. And he wished he had a tool to do something. And so the other brother wrote a program to help deal with those issues. Well, that eventually became Photoshop, and then they sold it to Adobe, and the rest is history. Anyway, so there's a render fail sound in After Effects. If it doesn't render through, or it has a problem, or it's corrupted and it stops the render, it goes meh, like a sheep. I wish I knew a way to make it do that. Meh, that's what it does. So I forgot what the original program for After Effects was called. It had a name. Maybe one of you guys know. You can rabbit hole at Wikipedia. But so this guy that built it, and Adobe, they buy stuff and they have them all blended together. Now it's great. But so the noise is still left over from the original guy who he's like telling his mom, I need a sound for when this. And so she recorded the sheep sound. The guy who first wrote the program, his mom made the sheep sound, is still there. Okay, this is a side note. All right, so this actually brings in a composition, and I'm just going to double click that composition. Now here in my composition windows is that comps open. These little tabs here are basically just tabs like in all the Adobe tools. I'm closing them all. So everything you do in After Effects is a composition. You can't do anything without having a composition, the same way you would do in Illustrator or Photoshop. And it is layer based, just like Photoshop. Some of those other tools, like I mentioned, Nuke, those are node based. So these files came in, and it's showing me right here that they're actually Photoshop files, a little Photoshop icon.
Oh, yeah.
So, but let's say maybe I want to change the word text to something else. And they wanted to say words. Okay, well, I could go back to Photoshop and make it say words and then update it in here, and it would update. But now you can't do this with Illustrator, but you can do it with Photoshop. If I right click on these Photoshop files that are text, I can go to create and then convert to editable text. So now this layer is a text file, a text layer, just like, so I can, highlight it, make it say something else. Words. Whoops. Words. So that, to me, that's an awesome thing right there. And in fact, and like this background, if I twirl it open and go into layer styles, the gradient overlay is still right here. I can edit this original gradient. I can even change the color in After Effects and change the angle. And I can, anything with a stopwatch, you can animate. Right, so now I just built that animation without having to go back into Photoshop and change the color and all that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's keyframes. It's just the way animation works. So and especially those of you that work in Photoshop all the time, you can pick this up. It takes a minute and it's different and doesn't work exactly the same, but you'll get it because it is similar enough. And so keyframes are basically just instructions based on frames. At this point in time, this is going to be the parameters of, this layer. So and the way you do keyframing is you click on the stopwatch until they're blue. And now keyframing is turned on for those two parameters, position and scale. And here's the two keyframes, and here's the numbers at that time. And if I go down a second, and I'll just make words huge. Maybe I should do it the other way. I can just take these keyframes and move them and change them. So now I'll have a big one at the front. So now we have this happening while the thing spins. You can also, right here, turn on motion blur, which gives you kind of a realistic motion blur that's looks relevant. There's also ways to change that amount. But so there, now I've just animated my Photoshop file.
John, how is this compared to the animation functions that are built into Photoshop? If you have ever had to use them.
Yeah, you can make you can do, you can do video too in Photoshop and all that. To me, I find it all cumbersome in there. Now I do go to Photoshop to make GIFs because it does it better than the whole After Effects way media encoder. I'll just make it a movie and then take it into Photoshop for GIFs. They look a little better, I think.
There's a question. There's a question in the chat pod here. Does it work similar to Smart Objects, where you can make edits to a vector file or other raster file, and if you do, it updates in AE? Is it external link then, like a Smart Object?
Well, it is, because it's linked to that file. I mean, so if I went to that, let's try that one. Make sure I'm not lying. I'm going to change this file. Let's see. I'll just change this word, and I resaved it. Now theoretically that should, that it updated right here.
Exactly.
In my thing. Let's convert that to editable text too, and just change the color so we can see it. Yeah. So it is dynamically linked, if you will, to that file, because and that's the way that After Effects works. Nothing is embedded in the project; it's all linked. You
But
can
when you made this editable text, it's no longer linked to the Photoshop document. Is that correct? Like if we go back to the Photoshop
hold on.
document.
That's an awesome question. I love that. Let's see. Yeah, so that's probably, you're probably, I mean, I would only assume it can't be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because I edited it here and I changed that. Yeah, now hold on, let's do a test. I'm gonna, and this, it should maybe do this on its own. I'm gonna duplicate this layer, right? And I'll convert this one to editable text, right? And we'll just type that one, and maybe we'll move it down a little. I'm just moving it down and over. Okay, so I copied it and changed it, but now I'm going to go back to the Photoshop file. Oops, did I close it? Yeah. And then we'll change this to that. Yeah, that's fine. Save. I'll go back here. It changed the one that I didn't. So if you were doing that, I would definitely do that if it was me. I may make a copy of it so I still have all the originals. Yeah, I'm surprised it maybe doesn't do that. It does that with you can tell it to make shape layers out of text. And what it does is it makes a new shape layer with that text, but keeps the text original layer there just turned off. That way you have full options. Yeah. Now this isn't as exciting as the movie composites, but you know, you never know where you're going to get the skills. So I do something in After Effects every day that I picked up from a tutorial. This is like 2000 and, well, this is like 15 years ago. It was a tutorial on how to build a 3D animating bar chart in After Effects. And I saw that guy do something and I'm like, oh, I love that. And I've been doing it every day since. All it is, it's just right clicking in this window, you know, or in the effects controls to get to the effects. Instead of clicking on effects, you can just right click in the effects controls versus going and looking at the whole list of things over here. And I got swirling. Yeah, you just right click in the effects controls. I picked that up. That's one of the first things for efficiency I picked up from a bar chart guy. You know, I never built a bar chart, but I learned that from the bar chart guy. Yeah, you never know. And I do that too when I'm working on stuff. I'll ask people, hey, come here, look at this. Because maybe they say something dumb. Well, that's dumb. Why? I'm not going to do that. Get out of here. Yet almost always that thing they said, I don't say it's dumb because I'm like, you know, I'm not, that's not going to work, but it makes me think this or that, or if we change this, it would be better, you know? And so often it improves my work if I listen, or if, you know, if I ponder some way to make it better based on somebody else's comment that may be coming from a place where they don't know, but it's a place where I'm not looking because I'm so focused on, you know, fixing the person's hair or whatever it is. I didn't notice that their shoes should be a deeper black or whatever the person might say. So I think it's, for me, that's what I don't like about the whole work from home and all that, you know, the collaboration, it's just not the same. Yeah, you can send people a link and, hey, what do you think of this? But it's not the same as if we remember when you go just down the hall, hey, come here, look at this for a second. Well, I don't know what you do. I know, but just come look at it anyway. And there's a thing with that for me. And I miss that kind of collaboration. Okay. I'm kind of
John, that sounds like a perfect segue to remind people that our Google group is a many to many, and you can post and say, hey, I've just posted this. Anybody want to take a look?
Good point.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I like that.
Think of it as your Adobe water cooler.
Adobe water cooler, that's good. Yeah, this one was blood. No, blood. This one, so now they look at everything, right? What's wrong with this shot? I worked on this shot because there was something wrong with it. Whoops, I can't keep doing that. So I'll show you. Right here, and a little bit down from there, right here, you can see that motion in the right, look right here.
Yeah.
And right up here, you know what that is? It's a reflection of the, yeah, it's the crew. Right, so it's a short shot. Right, but hey, gotta get that out of there. And you know, but you wouldn't, most people wouldn't even, but they want to do it, you know, the right thing. And so here's the repair on that. It's not moving here anymore, and that's all gone. Yeah, so again, same kind of thing. Make a clean plate. So I went into Photoshop. Whoops, why did I keep doing that? I went into Photoshop and basically just took the cloning brush and made a clean plate of this, painted these out. Down here, it didn't matter. I just took a freeze of it before the thing happened. Oops. And then just tracked them and put a little grain in there. Because if you look close, you can see all that. You guys probably can't see on the web, but there's grain in this whole thing. Yeah. This one was all these reflections, because there's late, it's the middle of the night. We don't want these cars driving by. So see all those reflections over there. They wanted all that removed. So we took them out. And that again was make a clean plate, use other parts of the shot to patch or a cloning brush or something. And then you have to do it like 6 times because the motion on each of these areas. Yeah, removing reflections from glass is not like, there's no button for that. You can't just type in remove reflection, enter.
Hey, John,
Yeah.
did you use any Mocha on this or just straight up After Effects?
Oh, yeah, no, dude, you know, I use Mocha on everything because it just tracks better. Mocha is a tracking tool that has their lightweight, or not their professional version, comes with After Effects. It's a planar tracker and it works great. And so depending on what you're doing, if I have multiple points and I'm tracking motion, I'll just go to Mocha first. If it's a camera track, well, then I'll use the camera tracker in After Effects, which a few years ago, it wasn't as good as it is now. It's pretty good. Yeah, tracking and masking. Those are your friends for, you know, any kind of compositing work.
It doesn't look like the movie ends well, John.
Yeah, and then this was also this was CinemaScope, or 1 to 2 240 239. So the it didn't like this twisting shot we did. It kind of, you can kind of see the road bending here, but actually in reality, let's see, control semicolon. Oh no, I got to be on this. Control semicolon. Yeah, here's the, so anything out of here didn't get, you know, wasn't produced. This is one of the opening scenes in the movie. Yes, fun. I got the movie work is great because you really develop a relationship with the people, because usually it takes so long. I mean, there's another movie I was on it for almost 2 years, over 100 shots, and I like the relationships that come out. And it's about, you know, it's about how good can we make this, not, you know, make the logo bigger so we can sell more Mountain Dews. So it's nice to have that element or be able to work on those kinds of things once in a while versus, you know, commercials. Yeah, commercials pay for my homes, so yeah, I don't know. Okay, what else? Someone with Photoshop is like, has a question.
Now, I do a lot in Photoshop, and After Effects to me is like Photoshop on steroids, like mega steroids. And yeah, there are almost too many things that you can do. I took an After Effects class and I worked for a month on a little, you know, it wasn't even a minute long. I think it was like 30 seconds. And yeah, it can get really confusing to me.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
It is. And you're not alone. It's a very strong tool. And I mean, it gets confusing to everybody. And unless you're doing that thing all the time, you know, you can't, I'll do that sometimes. I'm like, someone says, hey, I want to do a thing like that other thing you did, but it's been a few years. I'm like, okay, I have to go remember what I I'm not sure. I don't remember what I did. And it's like that. And so when I teach classes in After Effects sometimes at Lumen Bright, and that's one thing I tell them, you know, get good at one thing, like get really acclimated. I can do this and I can do it well. And then, you know, branch out from there, because otherwise it's just going to all get lost. It is a powerful tool. And, you know, and it happens that way at all levels. Like there's a girl at ILM that's the best in the world at making dinosaur toenails, right? That's all she does, but she's the best in the world at it. But she couldn't make a bar chart to save her life. You know, so there's all these specialties, and the higher end where it gets, the more it gets like that. You know, I mean, the people that make sound effects for movies aren't the same people that mix sound effects for movies, usually. Or that's why sometimes I'll have clients, will ask me to do everything. I'm like, you know, even when I watch a crappy TV show that was crap, there's like a credit roll. There's not just one name, you know, even when it sucks.
You have a film crew. You don't have just a photographer.
Yeah.
A videographer. It's a crew.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole, I mean, you know, full movies, there's a couple hundred people. And
Right.
My experience is everybody's working their tail off, because that's how they get their next thing. Hey, I like so-and-so, they worked hard on the thing. Everybody's like that, except for, you know, there's always like one person that somebody's sleeping with or something maybe, but everybody works hard because that's how they get their next, you know, gig. And it's interesting, you know, it's like the one film I worked on, Innocence, it was a union shoot. So I do, as a visual effects supervisor, I do a lot of this standing around at the shoot. And so I told the guy, hey, I'll help you move those chairs. He's like, oh, yeah, I wish you could, but you can't. Because it was union and they had all kinds of rules.
Hey, John, is that kind of why you had to create the knife on the knife blade? Like, was there some rule that they couldn't use sharp objects in the acting scenes or something? Was there some rule about that?
Oh, good question. You know, there's a behind the scenes. I should have shown that. There's a behind the scenes little movie of this film too. That's a good question. I don't think so, and I didn't ask. But of course, you know, it's a safety thing. Safety first. I mean, you think they could have faked it or whatever, but
it looks like he's about to take his whole arm off, not just a tattoo.
Really?
yeah. Well, there's another shot, and you know, we never see it. We never see it go in him or anything.
Good. Yeah.
But then there's a shot of it bloody after that. But that's about, and like the little bit of blood on her shirt, that's about as gory as this whole film gets. It's a psychological thriller, actually. And I've seen a bunch of them, you know, before you work on something, they send you a screener, you know, kind of the locked cut, no color correction or whatever. And the screener of this one gave me, like, I got goosebumps watching it, which that's really never happened to me before on these scary movie screeners, because they're, you know, yeah, it's a good, they worked hard. They did well. I was honored to be part of their team. Yeah, I'll tell you though, like I've tinted, it seems like 100 or 1 million car windows, car commercials, tint the windows. And maybe the car looks a little better aesthetically with tinted windows, but often they do it because, again, union rules, the drivers are union or SAG. And so if they are recognizable in a car commercial, then they have to be paid residuals. So if you darken the window so you can't see the driver, then the agency doesn't have to pay residuals, or the company, to the drivers. So in a way, it's a nefarious thing. But cars with windows usually look better, tinted windows. But I did that a million times too. Yeah.
All right, this has been awesome. John, I want to thank you very much. If there are any more questions, sure we have time for that. I think this has been very exciting, and for me, it's a strange world. I've always been keyframe impaired through my whole life. I have a hard time working with it. I gave up learning Flash and everything. But seeing how you're mastering this is amazing, John. So I want to thank you very much for your presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to.
And Karen, I'm not sure what we need to say or do to wrap this up. Anything we need to add? We're going to continue momentarily with a little volunteer chat.
Yes, I think I'll stop the recording now, and but when I do, let's just unmute ourselves and give John a round of applause.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. It was great.
Absolutely, it was awesome.
Oh,
Thank you.
great.